All right, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Sunday, May 29th, 2022. This is your daily tropical update video now with a little bit of look at Hurricane Agatha in the Eastern Pacific. Yes, we have our first storm of the 2022 season, either basin and the first hurricane. As usual, the Eastern Pacific wins that title, and this is Agatha down here in the left corner of your screen, expected to cross Mexico over the next few days and eventually work into the Atlantic side of things, where some potential impacts to Florida or somewhere over the northern Caribbean could be possible down the road. So we're going to talk about both things: the Agatha landfall in Mexico, and then we're going to talk about the follow-on from there. Otherwise, your tropics are mostly quiet today. Nothing much going on. Looks like May out there for the most part. All right, we'll go ahead and introduce you to Agatha down here. Hurricane Agatha now, as of the morning advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Again, maximum sustained wind 75 miles an hour. And we have what looks like a very much fledgling hurricane on our hands. Agatha is sporting that nice central dense overcast, obscuring any of the banding or eye features still. This is common with these storms when they first get going. It takes a while to start looking like a hurricane. It's like when you start losing weight, you got to kind of, it takes a while to get going where you're getting. And that's what the storm is doing right now. Overall, in a pretty good environment, very, very warm water down here almost year round. So the storm has no problem with warm water. That's mid to upper 80s in terms of water temperature. The overall upper air environment is pretty good. And Agatha has generally been thriving for the most part. Now, the rapid intensification that we were expecting hasn't quite set in yet. It's been a steady intensification, but there is a little bit of westerly wind shear. You can see these upper level clouds right here all moving off in this general direction. There's a large upper trough that's going to be steering Agatha back to the north and to the east eventually, but this is causing some westerly wind shear on the storm. We can see this evidence pretty well by the morning microwave pass. This is like the X-ray of the hurricane, if you will. You can see there's a little primitive eye going on in here in the X-ray of the storm, but it's kind of small and it's not really well defined yet. You can see there's a couple nice bands wrapping around the eye on both sides, but it's not complete. You have these kind of holes on this side, and if I were to draw a line through the middle of it, you can see most of the convection heavily weighted off to the east side, again, where that westerly wind shear is kind of pushing on the storm and causing thunderstorms on the side to collapse. So that's what Agatha's kind of dealing with this morning. This is all pretty common for hurricanes at this stage of their life, dealing with some wind shear. And it looks like the shear is going to stay with Agatha, so it looks like she's going to have enough of an environment to slowly overcome it, but it should hopefully curtail any more rapid intensification. Hurricane Center's 5-day forecast for Agatha, so again, maximum sustained wind 75 miles an hour, still drifting off to the north-northwest at 3 miles an hour, but that westerly motion probably about to end as Agatha's is going to start making that turn back to the east sometime today, and probably already has by this point. This is the morning advisory, so we'll get the around lunchtime advisory here in a little while, and moving off to the east then. Hurricane warnings up for parts of Mexico, tropical storm warnings flanking them. Agatha is expected to landfall as a hurricane, something around 90 or 100 miles an hour or so. This is the Hurricane Center's official forecast down here. 90 miles an hour around at landfall. Could be Category 1, could be Category 2. It will be a hurricane most likely, but it could be a little bit stronger, a little bit weaker than that. That landfall sometime around Monday afternoon, around 3, 4, 5 o'clock Central Time or Central Eastern Time, whatever. Sometime mid afternoon on Monday, early evening, and then it looks like she's going to go up into those mountains of southern Mexico and dissipate. Now that's important because Agatha will not be Agatha if she does get to our side of the pond. This will dissipate. There's very rugged terrain in Mexico, and the storm will not survive the trek across this strip of land. Even though you're like, well, it's not that much land. We could maybe sneak it across. No. But as far as Mexico goes, obviously heavy wind is going to be the main threat at the coast where the storm comes ashore. Agatha's not going to have a terribly large wind field, so the effects for the wind will mostly be localized to right where the storm comes ashore. Storm surge can be hit or miss in this part of the world because the Pacific shelf is much deeper off the coast, so storm surge doesn't have a chance to pile up like it does, say, on the Gulf Coast. But there'll probably be some localized water rising and things like that. The big threat with this is going to be heavy rainfall throughout central Mexico, or southern Mexico rather. You're going to have a lot of high terrain, mudslides, heavy rain, precipitation hitting mountains and really kind of piling up on one side of the mountain. So this is going to be a big rainfall event, big flood event for down here, and that'll be the primary impact in Mexico over the next couple days. Now, as you see with this cone, Agatha's remnants are expected to continue to drift beyond this cone and eventually will wind up somewhere here in the southern Gulf of Mexico. So what we call the Bay of Campeche down here in by the middle to end of next week. And this is when the Atlantic side comes into play, because right now the Hurricane Center is tracking this. They have a 30% chance of development on the remnants, quote unquote, of Agatha later on next week. You'll have a broad low pressure area set up somewhere around here, somewhere around the Yucatan. Our computer models show this pretty well. The GFS 850 millibar on Thursday morning again shows broad low pressure somewhere around here in the around the Yucatan Peninsula and the Western Caribbean, Southern Gulf of Mexico, and this matches up well with the European model, showing a bit more of an organized storm still, like maybe a partial remnant low that's still trying to hold together. Maybe you could see a mid-level vortex possibly survive, and that'll be the question: is what does Agatha look like coming off of those mountains in southern Mexico, and what does it look like here? Is there something tangible the storm can kind of hold on to? Is there some kind of weak mid-level low that'll survive and move off, maybe stay over water? Or are we going to have just a big mess drifting across and it's going to take until it gets back over water to try to reform? That's kind of the question. So for right now, it looks like Agatha won't be terribly strong when she were to come across and try to reform. I'm saying Agatha, but really it's going to be just a mess of low pressure that was Agatha on our side. If it were to reform, it would be named Alex. If it were to become organized, have a center and all the criteria, get the wind criteria, it would be named Alex. We would pull from the first hurricane name on the Atlantic side. It would be a new storm. It would not be a continuation of the Eastern Pacific storm. If Agatha survived somehow and kept its identity as a low-level center of circulation, it would still be Agatha, but it won't be because these mountains are just simply too high for any storm to survive. So, anyway, what we're talking about is this reformation potential. Now, the overall steering pattern, I'll show you here, is going to be this upper trough. This is valid for Friday. This is the upper level steering flow. Generally, you're going to have this upper trough moving through here, and this is going to be causing this general west to east, southwest, northeast motion. So Agatha's going to come across and continue to move across in some capacity of southwest to northeast. Now, this looks like Florida's peninsula is going to get whatever this happens to become, whether it's a named storm or it's not. Because of how this looks. Now, the environment that this storm will find next week is not going to be particularly hospitable right now. This chart here showing this band of heavy wind or high winds in the upper atmosphere, this will not be conducive for development. Hurricanes don't like these strong upper winds. This will cause the wind shear we talked about earlier and cause problems to the storm trying to redevelop. And the GFS also indicating that there will be a healthy amount of dry air over the Gulf of Mexico. Again, common this time of year as these troughs and fronts pass, you get these bursts of dry air. You see a lot of tropical air down here, but Agatha will be kind of riding along, or whatever's left will be kind of riding along this line. There'll be a lot of dry air to ingest, and this dry air gets in there, and the combination of dry air and shear should keep this in check. Now, if these conditions change, or this dry air doesn't show up as expected, or the winds aren't as strong, or again, if you have like a little vortex that might survive and give it a better chance to develop, you can still be talking about a decently strong tropical storm or something moving towards Florida, but it looks like the more likely outcome is a weak, sheared tropical storm or tropical depression, or just a low pressure in general. It doesn't have to really be named, moving across and moving towards Florida by the end of the week. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that there won't be impacts. The Weather Prediction Center already showing in their 7-day chart that South Florida could be receiving upwards of 5-10 inches of rain. I mean, there's some pockets there approaching 7-8 inches of rain as the storm crosses. And I want to stress that rainfall is not always tied to intensity of the storm. It's like, oh, well, if it's a tropical depression, it'll be less rainfall than if it's a hurricane. It's actually, there's not a lot of correlation there. Even a weak sheared storm in the right condition can produce a lot of rainfall. So the rainfall right now for the Florida Peninsula is the primary threat. I would say the western Gulf Coast, you're definitely not getting anything from the storm. And even the eastern Gulf Coast of the Florida Panhandle, it doesn't look like it's going to get that far north, right? So we're still talking, 5-7 day window. I don't want to speak in absolutes here, but it looks like this is going to be an issue for the central and South Florida Peninsula mainly right now is what we're tracking for that. With that, heavy rainfall is going to be expected. That'll be in the forecast. Thunderstorms probably a day or two before as that tropical moisture surges up. It may be a wet second half of the week across a lot of Florida, especially in central southern Florida, northern Florida, northeast Florida. Maybe you'll get out of some of that But largely speaking, that's going to be the primary impact. So we're going to see if this thing can redevelop. It may not. But again, Agatha going to hold on to hurricane status. Will landfall as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane sometime Monday afternoon in Mexico. It'll take 2 or 3 or 4 days for it to get across Mexico, get into the somewhere around the Yucatan Peninsula, southern Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean region, where it'll be a broad mess of a storm that won't be named or organized. And then we'll watch as it moves towards Florida Thursday, Friday, Saturday. See if it can redevelop into anything significant. It may just be a sloppy rainmaker. It may be a semi-organized tropical storm. On the worst case scenario, it could actually reorganize pretty well and be a healthy tropical storm. I don't think we're talking about a hurricane here, but that could potentially change. Just let's keep an eye on it. But right now, that's the most likely outcome. It's going to move across Florida late in the week or the weekend next week. So we got about a week to watch this. It's not on our doorstep tomorrow, but it is something to watch down the road, guys. Other than that, your tropics are quiet and not much else going on. So that's the latest on Agatha and the potential impact to the U.S. later next week. We'll be tracking all this on the page, so stay tuned for updates. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.